You're so funny. Well, today, while sitting on the toilet, I did come across this Business Insider article. And I guess it does have something to do with what we're talking about today on the pod. So let's chat. The title is Quitting Your Job This Fall. Key points that they said. Number one, hiring sometimes picks up during the fall. This year, economic worries could cut into that. And it's wild that they use the word could. Like, that's crazy to me. What do you think?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you started reading this is what I keep seeing on LinkedIn right now, that September is apparently a hiring surge. And so it's interesting to hear about the fall also being potentially a hiring surge.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like economic worries will cut into the hiring that usually happens. Here's their second point. Even if it's not a blockbuster fall, you shouldn't give up on your search, a career coach said. What are these words that they're using in this article about business? If it's not a blockbuster fall?
What does that mean?
That's what I'm saying. They're using ambiguous language on purpose?
Blockbuster fall. And then I'm sure it goes into like how to prepare for potentially landing a job.
Oh, I don't even know if it's so. The third one is if you do apply for a role, don't wait for an employer to contact you. This is what the career coach says. So basically, she's like, keep doing what you're. I say she. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I'm being misogynistic or not. Okay, there it is. Okay, I see she. It is she. I'm not being misogynistic. But she's like, keep doing what you're doing, even though it's not working. And I'm pretty sure continuing to do the same thing and getting the same result is insanity. Can I say that?
I think you can say that. I mean,
Okay.
It sounds, what I was going to say is really bad advice.
Yeah.
That is really bad advice to apply. Who cares if they don't reply to you, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Her recommendation, scream into the void. Just scream into it. There's nothing there. Nothing's coming for you. Nothing's going to respond. No one's going to respond to you. Just keep on yelling into.
And that made it on Business Insider. No offense, Business Insider, but come on. Better advice, please.
I mean, it seems like a trend on these.
But it's a horrible trend, and I think that's why our topic for today is totally on point with everything that we're seeing on LinkedIn and what we talk about, right? When you and I talk about spotting red flags before you're hired and the psychological safety in the job search. Because we have articles like the one that Farra just read that says scream into the void, don't worry about how you're doing it, don't reach out. What kind of advice are they giving?
What career coaches were for strategy?
And that is not very strategic.
That's it. Thank you. 100% that. Well, anyways, let's move on to our topic. Hey, Miriam, how's it going?
It is going, Farah. Another day. It's quite gloomy in LA today.
Oh, dang.
How's it going in Colorado?
Good old, colorful, sunny, all the time Colorado is doing its thing today. Yes, it is. All right, so our topic today, we're going to talk about psychological safety in a way that most people really aren't talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people really aren't thinking about it in terms of their job search. They're not thinking about whether or not there's going to be psychological safety in the companies that they're applying to. And also, they're not practicing psychologically safe things around their job search.
Not at all. And this article that you read about from a career coach, y'all, Farah is a much better career coach, let me tell you, because come on, that was lack of advice. And so if anything, I think today's episode will provide a little more guidance on how to handle the job application process when we're looking for jobs, when you're looking for jobs. September is supposedly a hiring surge, and fall might have some blockbuster jobs.
Blockbuster is crazy.
Also, Blockbuster went out of business. So, hey.
Foreshadowing.
Do we not remember what happened to Blockbuster and Netflix? Yeah, so, I mean, if if that's not telling of, outdated information and outdated advice, right? If we recap a little bit, psychological safety, what is that? Last episode, we introduced it to you all, and it's pretty much having that feeling within a team, department, work relationship. Psychological safety, we talk about it here at work, but it's really relational, right?
Yeah.
And it's that feeling to speak up, share your thoughts and ideas, be yourself, be your authentic self, bring your authentic self without fearing repercussions, without fearing like your ideas will be shot down, be ridiculed, without feeling like you just can't be yourself in an environment that's not welcoming to authenticity at work because maybe there's too much homogeneity, which we will talk about a little later. But this, you can tell psychological safety, and there's tells, right? That we can do, that you all can do before we're going to enter an organization, before we get hired. And so today's episode is going to talk about like what are the tells that are happening during the job search, recruitment that can provide insight to psychological safety for a job, for an organization, for a department. You can tell a lot from that interview. And that's what we're going to focus on today.
Absolutely tell a lot by that. And the way that you can tell is you got to be looking for it, because if you're not looking for it, you can definitely not see the signs. And you really risk being frustrated throughout the process if you get the interview. And you risk being frustrated in the workplace if you land the job, right? And that frustration leads to burnout down the line, no matter how you slice it. Like the body knows, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
As
Mm-hmm.
much as we want to ignore it. And because of that, like I can understand why it is a little bit more difficult for people who aren't like body aware, or people who haven't had the experience in the workplace to know like what to look for in these job postings, in these job listings. But that's what we're here for. You know, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
help you out. We're going to provide a little parasocial mentorship to everyone, because it really matters when it comes to things like this in the career search.
Yeah. And to provide some, background to folks, Farah and I both studied this on a master's level. So in terms of opinion and thought perspective, like we're sharing what we learned in our master's programs around organizational psychology, organizational behavior. I mastered in organizational leadership and Farah in industrial
Industrial and
organizational.
organizational psychology.
Yeah, so we're not just blabbing about this stuff. We had to actually read a lot about it, but I would say that one of the reasons that Farah and I are here talking to you about it is because we're nerds about it and we love the research, the background, the phenomena, that the psychological phenomena is fascinating to understand and to see human behavior at work. And so it's really interesting to see how these psychological phenomena leads to burnout. And I think when you're in Farah and I shoes, you can see that level of like the train is coming, or like you're heading to chaos. You know an organization is not gonna, I think you said this one time, Farah, like when you were looking at a job, you're not gonna come out a healthier person after
Yeah,
going to that job or something like that. You phrased it. And
definitely. Yeah.
and to get to that point where you can tell, right? Like, oh, this is an organization that I want to work for because of however you felt, or like maybe you can, I don't know, this is putting you on the spot. Like, what made you feel from like a job or maybe other jobs? Like, how did you know you were not going to come back healthy? Like, initial tells before we get into it?
Hmm. Well, they're definitely initial tells. Number one, I definitely read some reviews and ignored them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Okay.
pretty simple one.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? But you know what we forgot?
We will. So, welcome back to Burnout Meets Thriving. In our last episode, we broke down what psychological safety is and why it's a foundation for innovation, trust, and engagement at work.
And so today we're going to be zooming in on how to spot whether or not there's going to be psychological safety in a team or a company or an organization that you want to join or have been asked to apply for. Because sometimes, we have friends who are like, hey, apply for this. And yeah, your friend might like it there. Your friend might be having a good experience there, but what about you? You're two different people. So it's good to know how to look for these tiny little things in these job posts that will ensure that you will have psychological safety throughout. So today, we're going to reiterate that, like, yes, we all need a job, right? And it should not just be about a paycheck, but sometimes it is. And so we're here to provide strategies to kind of get around that necessity.
Mhm. Mhm. And to try and hopefully find a good fit with a job with an organization before you get the job and organization, because it's much, I guess, strategically, right, when we're thinking about your
Well,
job
what's a good
search.
fit first? Like, what's a good
Yeah,
fit?
and there's many different ways that we can look at that, but when we're thinking about fit, you want to look at your personality, your wants, your needs. What are you looking for out of a job? Yes, paycheck, but when we're thinking about your happiness, engagement, longevity at an organization, hopefully you have these other things, criteria, right? It's not just the job description for the employer. And I think that like our workforce is so totally tailored around the employer has the upper hand. But employees and workers can also have the upper hand. And
Well,
part
there's
of
more
that
of
is
us.
exactly, right? But the design is so that they
Yeah,
have the upper hand.
true, true,
So
true.
job fit, when I talk about job fit, I'm talking about like there is fit of yourself to a job. So like the specific requirements to the job, a fit to the organization. So every organization has a culture, what they value, their mission, how they do work, their processes, their procedures, how they spent time off or not time off. Like there's just so much that goes into the organizational makeup. It's like a living organism, right? The
It is.
organization. And then so job fit to job, organization, department, team. There's so many tells or data information points that you can gather from the website, from the job description, from pre-screening, from interviews, like all those steps in getting to the organization are not always transparent. That's the other part, that they're not always transparent. It's funny when you were talking about your friends or, having friend referrals. I actually worked at a place that was so toxic. And I remember that I had friends, it's a place that's known where people want to work. And I
Right.
remember folks saying like, "Hey, if there's any openings, like consider me." And I am someone who carries myself very transparently and very directly. And I said, "You don't want to work here." And I was also in a position of power in the sense of like I had a director role. And for me to say that, I'm probably going to get in trouble. I don't care. Like when we burn bridges, we burn. We're going to have a future episode about talking about why we sometimes need to burn bridges. We're so afraid of burning bridges, but like sometimes you need a shit that like that shit needs to be blown up.
Straight up.
Otherwise, we're sending like other people to this fucking their demise as well. And like organizations have too much power that sometimes they shouldn't. Just going to put it out there. Like we need to change the upper hand because workers definitely have an upper hand. But I was that transparent human, right? Because I was a director at that job, but I was like, hey, you don't want to work here. It's one of the most toxic places that I've ever worked at, and this is why. That person still said, that's fine. I'll like try. So this is where we think about like values and fit, that hopefully you would do a little assessment on your end to figure out like, is this going to be a good place for me or
Mhm.
not, or am I going to be job hunting 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line? Or right now it's really hard to tell because I think the workforce is changing so much and so fast.
Mhm.
But to reel it back, we'll go back to like, what are some psychological safety tells that you can do during the interview process or your job search process to try and see if the job that you're gonna land hopefully is a good one that you can find some fit in versus something that is a completely bad fit for you.
Okay, so I'm sure some of you guys are wondering why this matters. Apart from from my IO lens, my IO psychology lens. So There's been a lot of research on disengagement. Truly, there's been so much. And time again, the research comes back and tells us the same thing over and over again. Psychological safety is very important, not just as an idea, but also as a culture. Like, you need it to combat disengagement. And when we have disengagement in the workplace, what do we get? We get burnout, right? Typically, disengagement is one of the primary signs of burnout. Not wanting to be in there, not wanting to just kind of get in there, get your check and clock out kind of a thing, In an unsafe workplace, it may look good on paper. You may seem like we work as a team, right? Like, what does that mean? There's lots of different kinds of teams. There's like sports teams and there's different kinds of sports teams. Like, just that word alone is pretty vague, but it does make you feel like there's a sense of togetherness without saying that we're a family. Because I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. The HR people know not, well, let me rephrase that. The smart HR people know not to put "we operate as a family" in these job posts. Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, we gotta.
The more you know.
Yeah, so there's like different, like Miriam said earlier, like constantly evolving, right? So just like language is constantly evolving, you gotta look for things like how are they using the word teams, So it's easier to avoid these unsafe organizations up front rather than try to fix something, because I know it's a lot of people out there who feel like, oh, if I just get in there, I can fix it. If this one person gets in there, I can change it. Like, I got this, right?
Damn, Farra, I feel called out. I feel like you're talking to me right now. You're talking to my old version who, yes, I did want to get there and fix it.
I mean, we've all been there. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I read reviews and said, "Nah, I'm gonna try anyway." A lot of us have been there, and if it feels like a mirror, then it is. Sometimes. It's just like that.
Yeah, I think that that's a big takeaway, right? It's easier to avoid unsafe organizations, jobs up front than to fix once inside. I think I feel personally called out on that one because I very much, as someone who is attracted to mission-driven work, would very often be called in to do the mission work. And, then you find out there's so much messiness and chaos around organizations. And I think that's how I ended up studying organization behavior, psychology, and humans at work because I find it so fascinating. And that's where that leadership lens, comes in because I'm thinking about all the processes, departments, and how organizations take you through the recruitment process tells you so much about what you're going to experience once you're inside.
And so
little. And that is so important because you can get that information ahead of time and you can make decisions up front. So hopefully this is a bit of an empowerment episode that leaves with practical tools that you can actually use to feel empowered of you making decisions and not giving the employer an upper hand, where you have your values list, or if you have like the things that you're looking for, and in this case, psychological safety, which we're advocating for, where you want to work at a place that has psychological safety so that you can thrive in there, there are tells and some information that you can get up front. And it's what I'm calling like the pipeline of hiring, right? Which goes from the recruitment process where, to the job posting, from the job posting to screening process if there is one, to the interview, to in person, through Zooms. I've had some friends, I'm sure you all have maybe even experienced this. You prep for an interview. You arrive to the interview. They are not ready for you.
Ooh, they're 15 minutes late.
What is telling of they're not ready for you, they're running late, oh, we have to cancel. Oh, we didn't know you were coming. There's maybe little communication between, like HR department to like the hiring manager. The point is, like, if you show up to something like that, that should be a glaring red flag of how that place is organized or not organized. Now, if you're okay with that, cool, but one might warn you that that can probably look very differently and affect you on a very different level once you're at that organization on a day-to-day basis if they're not prepared or organized for something as important as an interview, right? Like, you're a future talent. You're the new member of the team. If they don't care about you and they're signaling that they're not caring about you by being late, by not prepping for you, by having to cancel last minute, by not returning your application, like, I think one of the other things that I'm seeing a lot of on LinkedIn, I experience myself, you apply to jobs and you don't hear anything back. I don't know when that became the norm, but that's not a place that I want to work for if you can't even be bothered to respond to another human who is wanting to work at your organization.
I've read on LinkedIn recruiters justifying not replying or sending any kind of email. This is what they're saying, some of them, not all. They're saying that, like, I've heard many of my friends who are job searching talk about how disappointing and dehumanizing it is to get so many rejection emails at a time. So I question, I don't know if this is her voice because this is on LinkedIn. This is a voice in my head.
I love the voice in your head, though. I love that monologue reader.
And she's like, so I question, should we be sending out rejection emails? Is it morally just? I was like, wait a second, hold on, calm down. Just talking about morals and whatnot all randomly, but like, I don't know. Like, I guess, like, I've definitely experienced, the mass rejection of it all before,
Mm-hmm.
but also I'm kind of glad that at least I know kind of a thing, like closure, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That reads really funny, and I wonder if that HR person is a
The
good HR
recruiter.
person or
Yeah, I gotta send it to
recruiter
you.
because you need information to move on, right? Like, if you, and I think we've talked about this, you and I, before, though, right? The application tracking systems, how insane they are nowadays with, like, you have to carve out an hour to apply to a job, maybe, if you're lucky,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a website. You have to create an account. You have to fill out your personal information. You have to submit a resume. You have to submit a cover letter. Now they're asking for extra work. And to not even get a response, it's like ghosting. It's like fuckboy status. Like, this person is not responding to me. This organization, we're gonna call them fuckboy organizations. We'll get a better, I don't know if we like that or not. But I mean, I think that's a good way to think about it, right? If we have these standards for our friends and our relationships, why don't we have similar standards with employers? Why do we give them the upper hand? And so, like, I think about, what you're saying about, like, not sending a reply to me is just so rude. Like, it's an exchange. It's really interesting when we talk about like transactional leadership, transactional, organizational cultures where it's very like the tit for tat. And so to get to this space where now like employees are applying at mass to organizations and we don't get any responses, like, that's not cool. That's not okay. And it's not information for the employee. Like, if you're applying
Mm-hmm.
to a job and you're not hearing back, maybe you should just move on, right? Maybe just let it go and keep going. Because I do think that there's a level of kind of like emotional, there's a toll that goes into like not hearing back for prolonged periods of times. I've been reading and I had some friends who like were unemployed for a whole year, not without
Mm-hmm.
trying. They were like submitting applications, would get close to, landing the job and then last minute not get it, but not be provided a reason why. And I think that, like, at this point, we need to know why, right? Applying at mass, not hearing back, not hearing why not, is not giving people good information and it leaves job seekers like lost, right? Like, I read
Yeah.
a lot of people who feel very lost in the job search, not qualified, what's wrong with me? Like, then we internalize. Then we turn the organizational chaos and how the organization is not responding, not good at communicating. So maybe we call that out, right, Farah? Like, if an organization is not responding back, that is poor communication, right? You
Absolutely.
usually expect a response to something that you're putting out. And if you're not getting that, would you accept that from other relationships in your life? Let's also remember that a job is a professional relationship. It's a contract, but it's a professional relationship with the organization. And if it's missing a lot of the stuff that is leading to that psychological safety, whether or not you're going to be experiencing that, you can already tell before hiring on by some of these tells.
Don't you have a personal red flag story to share with us?
I sure do. Story time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking about tells, and we're talking about whether or not an organization, a job that you are applying to, is going to have good psychological or bad psychological safety. And remember why psychological safety matters is because it's what's going to allow you to thrive at work with sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your perspectives without feeling like you're going to get in trouble, or, it's just a good place to be authentic.
Retaliated against.
Retaliated against, yes. So I remember when I was in the job hunt, I interviewed for a nonprofit that was nationwide. And again, y'all, this is the information that you, as the interviewee, as a person that is job hunting, you want to notice these things because they will 100% come back later. 100% come back later. If you experienced it in the job search, in the interview, you're going to 100% experience it when you're hired on.
Tenfold.
And even worse, you might be stuck there already. And it might have implications for you that are way more uncomfortable. So I interviewed for a California nonprofit, California wide. And in their interview process, it was 20 minutes. It was a first screening process for an executive director position. This is already a higher level. So like now we're talking about different levels within organization that you would be looking for different things depending on different levels. For an executive director for a nonprofit, you want them to be on their A game. So I had to interview with their board and their board leaders, and the 20 minutes went by pretty fast, and it got to the point where it was my turn to ask questions. You should always have questions to ask, and we're going to actually give you a nice little PDF of questions to ask during your interview process so that you know what to ask. So it was my turn to ask questions, and for an executive director position where you are going to be the face of an organization, you would think that the board or the organization has an idea of what they're looking for, right? They should have talked about there's a position that we created. In this case, it's the executive director. But if it's another organization, there's a reason why they're hiring you. There's goals, there's projects, there's a job to be done that you're getting hired for. So there should be conversations
One would
about what they're
assume.
looking for. One
Mm-hmm.
would assume qualities, skills, background. So when I ask them, what are the qualities that you're looking for in the person that you're hoping to hire for this position? All they said was what's on the job description. Now, y'all, when someone doesn't know how to answer questions, that's your red flag number one. When you ask a pretty valid question, and then at some point you might think, is that a valid question? And that's like when internal gaslighting gets like swapped and you start questioning yourself. But if they don't know how to answer very simple questions like, hey, what qualities are you looking for? What specific skills are you looking for? When it comes to, executive director, there's different focal points that you can look for depending on your nonprofit, on your corporation. Like you're looking for a specific kind of skill set for the most part, right? That's where like skill set comes in with matching goodness of fit, right? But if the board and the leadership doesn't know what they're looking for, not only is it telling maybe you're not very prepared for this interview, the relationship with the board or entity aside, the relationship with your potential future supervisor, leaders, a board is the one that manages the direction a lot of time for nonprofit organizations.
Hmm.
That's telling of preparation, communication style, how they organize, how they prepare, how they not prepare. And to say something as like simple as what's on the job description, let's turn that around. Let's see if for any of the questions that they asked me, I said, it's on my resume. So
Yeah.
like what skills can you bring? It's on my resume. Do you
Yeah.
see how like that's like me not knowing how to answer the question? Like what skills do I have? If they say like what are my top strengths? It's on my resume. If I can't talk about it in an interview, that's concerning to me. I don't know. What red flags come up to you in what I shared, Farah,
I
as an IO
mean,
practitioner?
there's a few for sure. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. If there's like a kink in the chain of the system, it's gonna happen over and over again for sure. In the interview, when they basically was like, look at the job description, my first question in my mind was, do they even know what the job description says?
What they're
Yeah. Like the hiring for sure, but if they can't even say the words verbatim from what they supposedly wrote, like that's kind of crazy to me and absolutely a giant red flag.
mm-hmm.
um I can't even like fathom being, I haven't been in an interview like that yet where
You
they
don't
were
want to be.
like, I can't, I definitely don't want to be, where they can't explain to me what they're looking for in a candidate, because that is absolutely a question that I always ask. So just, red flags everywhere. Did they show
Mm-hmm.
up late? Did you say that?
They did not show up late.
Okay, all right.
They did not. They definitely didn't follow the process of their interview process as they outlined it.
Oh, so they are liars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which there are a lot of liars out in the recruitment sphere. Yeah, but this is also really interesting when you have like the different handoffs, right? So
Mhm.
hiring processes are so different in terms of like is it HR, is it an like assistant, is it the actual hiring manager? So like when tasks are being handed off to other people who are supposed to be responsible for stuff, if there's a breakdown to you in the interview process, that is telling of their mechanisms once you get in there. None of this will ever be a surprise. And I think this is what we so often overlook. Like it was just a fluke, it was just an interview. But all of these things are tells of what you're going to experience in the organization. And I think, I don't know how else to drive this home. I think maybe from like trial and error on my end, I'm pretty sure this is going to like really validate a lot of your experience. When the interview is a shit show, your job is going to be a shit show. When your
Definitely.
interview experience is confusing or when they don't know what they're talking about, there's poor communication, maybe even how they treat you, right? I think
Even
there
if they
was
show up disheveled, 'cause I've had that happen.
Yeah, this is all tells, and they're information for you to decide is this something that you're going to want to stick with or not. And I know that we need a paycheck, but then there's also the happiness and engagement and thriving that comes after you get hired. So, like, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I would want to help you is to, like, help discern and help make choices and help spot these things beforehand so at least you have information ahead of time instead of being blindsided by it.
At least you can, if you got to take the job for the check, at least you can prepare a little bit for it. Build
Yeah.
some armor, put some boundaries up, before you get in there.
Yeah.
Because, we do want to reiterate that, like, we all have to pay our bills at some.
But there's also power in discerning. And I think that
Definitely.
right now and for a long time, right? I think without having studied organizational psychology, a lot of this is very nebulous when you're just a job seeker or when you're just kind of, living life. If you're not really keen on looking for these things, you might not know it exists. And so we are going to help you spot these things and to really kind of say that out loud, right? Like if you're experiencing this pre being hired during the interview process or the recruitment process, very likely it's going to happen while you're on board. And so you have to start thinking about your tolerance level for those things, and maybe you keep looking for other jobs. Like, feel empowered to say, I know I need the job, but this is not a good one for me because X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
It is very, very true that most people aren't constantly reading about workplace dynamics, the labor force, and all of that. That's mostly just me and also Miriam. So let's get into what the research is saying. As I said earlier, the research keeps telling us over and over again that we need psychological safety to ensure productivity, to be honest. So let's talk about this article we came across. It's on psychological safety and psychosocial safety climates in the workplace. I'll save you the big words. It's pretty much a meta analysis, right? So they looked at a bunch of books and charts and stuff from, let's say, I think it was between 2000 and 2023. So pretty big amount of years of research and things that they looked at. And so what this implicates is that, yeah, there's like growing interest in it. So that's cool, right? Like we want that. We want that to continue so this interest can mature into being an actuality in the workplace. So I'm glad somebody is studying this, right? Somebody with some money is studying this. So there is a little bit of like conceptual confusion when it comes to psychological safety and psychosocial safety because those are, you know, they're similar, but they're a little bit different, right? Like the psychological aspect, the psychological safety is what you feel inside your mind, right? And then the psychosocial safety is the socialization aspect of, so like the communication and things like that. Am I safe to communicate in the way that I communicate best, right? So hopefully, we'll have 10 more years of research to help and support this what they review like close to it, like 990 articles.
Close to 1,000.
Yeah, and that's a lot. That seems like a lot, but there could be more. We got to validate it, we want these to be like measurable things so that we can, I hate to use this term, but sell it to the CEOs, because I say sell because that's typically the only language that they understand. So bottom line, like main takeaway is that like psychological safety, psychosocial safety, they're very, very powerful things that we can use in the workforce when it comes to ensuring that employees are feeling good in their bodies. So like well-being, that has to do with your body and your mind, to make sure, not even to make sure, to cultivate an environment where they feel that they can perform at their best, where they're feeling motivated to perform at their best. And overall, this is great for retention, right? Like IOs, people in, org leadership, we all know that attrition is the biggest expenditure when it comes to a budget for an organization. So if we can just integrate these policies into our systems, then we will all of us, the laborers, us, the workforce, the CEOs, wouldn't have to always be going back every quarter to do this and do that and reconfigure this and reconfigure that. So hopefully, we'll see a brighter future when this, research continues.
I think one of the most interesting things that I find when reading articles like this or research like this is the disconnection that the CEOs and money drivers have in organizations to the need for these things, right? Like, I think it's the amount of COOs and CEOs that I've worked with that overlook how we're training our staff and how that leads to attrition and how that is not budgeted for. Like when we talk about we have an annual budget for positions, how much money is actually going into replacing staff? And
Oh, that's crazy.
If we think about onboarding, training, and how like some organizations do that on a annual level, maybe that's y'all more information to ask in terms of like how long has your longest employee, like it's very telling if someone has worked there for 10, 20 years, maybe even 5. I think the longevity level is much smaller now. But if there's an ongoing revolving door of always hiring, we have to ask why. Is it the same position or new position, right? If it's a new position, cool, there's growth. But if the organization is, if there's attrition, and pretty much what that means, y'all, is, people leaving the organization. If that's happening a lot, that should be insight to you about the organization fuckery that you will likely experience and will likely be leaving yourself at some point.
As a matter of fact, that's a question you can ask in the interview process. What is
Mm-hmm.
your attrition rate for the
Mm-hmm.
quarter?
And if they don't know that information, that is information for you.
Yeah.
They might know it, they might not want to share it. They might not know it, which tells like their sophistication levels of keeping track of their staff or not, whether they care or not of tracking that. That's a great question to ask is, turnover rates and why people stay, why people leave. Like another question you can ask is, what do you find is what keeps people working here? Why do they like working here? Is a good question to ask, I think. And it's always going to be very variable, right? Because perspective by people. But if there's shifty eyes, or if there's like no clear response or direct response of why people like to work at a place, they're not telling you something. We're hiding something. If they're not clear about like people like the hours, people like the mission, the work, the clients, the services, if there's nothing to tell there, red flag, red flag. And that's a question for you. Is that going to be a place that you want to work?
True, because they can have values and mission statements all day.
That lives on the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they
I
embody
I
it?
like to ask about that. That is a
Yeah.
question. I'm like, I'll say I had an interview with Visa like a few months ago, and a question that I asked the recruiter, great guy, great recruiter. He asked him, I see that Visa's values are about like, helping everyone, everywhere, no matter the whatever. So that's, not verbatim. Obviously, I'm just, saying that you guys can look it up on your own. Visa's a big company. And so he gave me a great answer. He was like, well, I'll tell you right now. I actually had an interview with someone who was interviewing for a role that she wasn't a good fit for. And when I told her she wasn't a good fit, she like, was having an emotional reaction because, people are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, he goes, I actually have a different role for you that is actually a better fit after interviewing you. Right. So, like, that was the uplifting,
Mm.
everyone, that he was actually embodying that. And I thought that was,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gosh, if only the workforce had more recruiters like that.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if his identity had anything to do with it.
Why do you say that?
Mad tea, mad tea. Oh, you know why I said that. You know exactly why I said that. I don't even have to
Mm,
tell you what he looked
yeah.
like. I can just from this conversation, you already know, given like the differences in the way that people treat you based on what you look like, because that is also a part of the job seeking process.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's just gotten worse since we all got to put our pictures up on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
right? It makes it a lot
Yeah.
easier to lean into those biases. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I could
I
go
was I
on
was
and
about
on
to
and on.
say I was about to say for folks who are not catching our drift, we are talking about bias in hiring practices. And that's a really fascinating topic that everyone swears does not exist, but data will tell you otherwise. Bias in hiring practices totally exists.
Yeah,
If
lawsuits will
not
tell
gone.
you otherwise.
Mhm. Yeah. I just like to see all the people talk about how it doesn't exist, right? But I think the folks that say hiring bias doesn't exist is probably not from a marginalized group
Who's
and
saying
probably
that?
lacks that. I've seen on. I'm gonna send you the LinkedIn post, y'all. There are some people who swear that hiring bias doesn't exist.
No,
I
you're
think
right.
I think it's. Oh, you're being sarcastic.
Yeah, yeah.
The organizations that, are too perfect. We don't have a mirror. We can
Mm-hmm.
self-reflect and know about our processes and where we're dropping the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
remember, if you're in a bad culture, you probably can't change it.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. Like systems exist for a reason, right? Like
Mhm.
systemic change takes a lot. And
Mhm.
it takes all of us, not just one person. And you also have to remember like the job search process and just roles in general are not one size fits all. As you
Mhm.
said earlier, discernment is
Mhm.
a, you didn't say a virtue, but I'm going to say it. It's a
Mhm.
virtue, right?
Mhm.
Like it can feel difficult, but at the end of the day, like you're going to be glad that you practice some
Yeah.
discernment in
Yeah.
that because why say it with me now? You are not a captain save a organization, okay? Because that's not who you are, you
Say it
know?
again. Affirmation for the week, please. Yes, loud and clear. Y'all write this down right now. Write it on your journal. Write it in a post-it. Put it in your screen. I think the hope out of being able to talk to you all, or for you all to hear these conversations with Farah and I, is so that you can feel that level of empowerment. If you didn't know, now you know. And if you did know, but maybe were afraid of practicing it, I'm here to tell you, practice it for yourself. This discernment, we have to change the power dynamics. Employers have the upper hand. They can't do the work without the employees. And we, revolutionize, right? The workforce.
Mhm.
And so from this article that we read, finding that psychological safety and the safety climate are strongly linked with things like engagement, lower burnout, innovation, and that leadership behavior, feedback practices, error tolerance are key drivers of all of this. So pretty much what all that means, right, is the article that Farah shared when they did a meta-analysis when they're looking at thousands of examples, these were strong links that they saw. And what's interesting for us is that while most of this research happens after someone is hired, I feel like most of the research that I encountered when I was like finishing my master's, a lot of it is people at work already.
Yeah.
And so like we're bringing in a very interesting perspective here because there's so much that's happening before getting hired. And and I think that's where we talk about or where I think about like prevention and discernment because then we end up burned out. And I think that's part of the goal here when we're talking about burnout meets thriving. How does burnout meet thriving? How can we go from feeling depleted to then feeling good with ourselves, with our jobs? So while most of the research focuses on when someone is hired, like this is an interesting perspective because all of this is, signals that you can experience in the pre-hiring process or like recruitment process where you have the leader behavior. So your hiring manager, are they in the room? How are they acting? How are they talking? How are they behaving? What's a vibe? If you're
Mhm.
not a person that's picking up vibes, then just pay attention to communication and how are they communicating, tone. Um, Again, timeliness was something that we talked about. So are they respecting your time as well? Are they prepping for you? Do they know your name? Or are they like, who are you? Like, have you shown up to interviews where they don't even know, like, you, oh, these places
Not
are
yet.
not organized. I have, where they didn't even, like, it just, you can tell that HR was doing all the work and they just, like, sent it to the hiring manager and the hiring manager was not prepped for it. So, like, that's more information where, all right, this person's not prepped for work.
Was this
Good luck.
nonprofit or
Yeah.
public or private or
Nonprofit. I've mostly worked in nonprofit spaces.
see in the private space, like you're lucky if they have an HR department.
Really?
Yeah. 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 Sometimes your first interview is with the head of the department that
Uh-huh.
you're sometimes, not all the time. Yeah, in my experience.
Yeah, no, this is very unique. This is where like talking about it is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more that we talk about our experiences, to like find out, hey, that's okay, that's not okay within the interview process, the more we can develop that empowerment, right, of what we should expect
Like pay
instead of being
transparency.
like that. That's another big one, right?
Mm-hmm. Really.
How do we spot psychological safety or its absence during the hiring process? We're going to start with a list of red flags, the tells that we mentioned earlier. Farah, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So, the lack of safety in hiring, of course, is going to lead to some early burnout red flags. The first one, the interviewers dominating the conversation. They giving you time to respond. Do they care about your response? Are they giving you time to ask questions? Are they asking you if you have questions? You know, because I've been in an interview before where they didn't even ask me if I had questions. Pretty crazy to me. Vague answers about culture, like that's such a big red flag. We already talked about the we're a family here thing, right? That has turned into we are all team players. Like if you ask about the culture and they say that, that's interesting. That probably means that you'll have lack of role clarity, to be honest, and you'll be all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
The whole work hard, play hard culture. These are going to squeeze you and squeeze you and squeeze you until you or to play.
Mm-hmm.
In job postings or job listings, the thing that says like duties subject to change or like duties come as assigned.
Other duties as assigned, yeah. Definitely have seen that.
Like, yeah, that's
The
crazy.
catch-all to we told you we can change your job before hiring you, which technically y'all is not okay.
It's
That's
not.
where Farah called it role clarity. That's what it is. Role clarity. You should have a fundamental understanding of what your job responsibilities are before being hired. And I think that line definitely says we can change it, which, okay, fine. Jobs change. But there are places that then rely on we can change your job at any point, at any time, depending on what our urgent matters are right now, because we don't know how to organize or plan ahead.
Oh, you mean like Klarna right now? Why do
Oh
I keep
yeah,
bringing that up?
whiplash there.
Oh man, those poor engineers.
Mm-hmm. That
Wow.
was probably the line for the engineer that said other duties as assigned, and they
Yeah.
never thought that they would get there.
Yeah, they probably thought it was like if they were getting hired for front end, they're like, maybe I'll do some back end stuff. Like if they were in marketing, maybe they like, oh, maybe I'll have to do like content or something, randomly for something. Definitely
That
not.
was
Let's do customer
stretched.
service.
Mm-hmm. That was stretched to a very different role responsibility.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
more red flags. There's so many. Defensive about feedback. So they don't want to talk about any of the bad things that come up or have come up in the public eye. If you were like interviewing for a tech company, my challenge to you would be to ask about any of the current lawsuits that the company is facing. Sometimes they're applicable to the workforce and workers' rights and things like that. So that response will be really interesting on whether or not they're open to talk about it or whether or not they choose to reframe, or there's just like so many things to think about when asking
Mm-hmm.
a question. Have you had any experiences with getting defensive feedback?
Not that comes to mind right now, but the we're a family, work hard, play hard thing has definitely been something that's pervasive to the jobs that I have applied for. Like, there's big expectations to you're on the clock around the time. Like, it's normal to read emails at 9 p.m. Like, it's almost expected to work
Mm,
after hours. And, the work hard, play hard, we do whatever it takes. That's such a common one is we do whatever it takes for the client, for the service. And sometimes that signals lack or poor boundaries.
definitely.
The
Sometimes,
defensiveness is
really,
not
sometimes.
a lot of times that signals your poor boundaries. Can't think of any defensiveness, but I've experienced some of these other red flags for sure.
What about, I guess, disorganized panels in the interviewing process, right? So just like
Mm-hmm.
is the process streamlined in the interview process? Are they following the guidelines or protocol that they've listed out? Or like, usually when I get called in for like a primary first phone interview, in that email or in that phone call, they will lay out the process in which we're going to be going through, right? They're like, oh, we have this 3-step process. You'll be interviewing with blah, 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 blah. If they are disorganized on that, they're going to be disorganized indefinitely while you were working there. There's just no getting around that one at
No, it's not.
all.
That example that I talked about earlier with the executive director for the nonprofit and the communication between their departments, they had an executive VA, a virtual assistant, who was handling the initial conversation with me. And then when it came to the actual group board interview, that's when the balls were dropped. And so that's where like the VA, the assistant, had a very like outlined what the interview process would look like. The board that was interviewing me after that did not follow that process. So there is a level of like confusion that happens when you prepare for the process that is outlined. You show up and you expect something to happen, and it's like, oops, we didn't get that memo. What do you mean you guys didn't get that memo? You guys are coordinating this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though I really wanted that job, because on the outside, this is a nonprofit that I am a fan of. So this is really always so interesting when like you can present a certain way, but working at the organization is completely different. I had followed this nonprofit for a very long time. I was very excited to interview for them. And during the interview process, I was even asking myself, like, this is information for me. If they are having a hard time coordinating and organizing to hire for an executive director, which is like the role to lead your organization, what is it like for everyone else? And then if that's a relationship with the board, what is that relationship going to be like for me? And then I think how Farah mentioned earlier, when we think that we can fix it and we think little old me can fix a system or can fix a culture, system and culture change takes time. And there has to be awareness for that. And that's actually some of the questions that I asked during that process of how they were managing transition and change. And it was like completely over their head of how they manage transition and change. And that's also very telling. So that's information for you. Is this the kind of job and the work that you want to do? Yes or no? And like then your tolerance level for it, right?
Yeah.
Which takes us into some of the green flags, right? Like, what are some of the good things that can be happening during an interview that can show like, hey, this is a place that has it together, or enough,
Yeah, just
um
enough.
just enough, because I think we have to be careful about binaries and wanting perfection, because there is no such thing as the perfect place. I think it's going to be really hard to get all of your boxes checked, but that's where like it's important to know like what are your non-negotiables and what are the things that you are like okay with compromising, or pretty much like figuring out your give and takes.
Yeah, make a list.
Mhm.
Write
Mhm.
out their values and then write out your values underneath and see if you can draw a line
Yeah.
to any and or most of them.
Mhm. Mhm. So take us down these green flags. What are some good things that like we would be looking for?
Openness about mistakes specifically. Going back to asking questions about, oh, what happened with this lawsuit? If it's a bigger company, for sure.
Mhm.
They should be open to talking about it because it is public knowledge, right? Like, so
Mhm.
if they're, open about this very big public mistake, that's a good sign that they're willing to admit fault. And that's a good sign that overall they're willing to take account.
Mhm. Mhm. I can even think of that question. Remember when we were talking about job fit to like you and the job, you and the department, you and the organization? You can ask it in different ways. So like the lawsuit can be public facing, but you can also ask about like, what's an example of a mistake your team recently made and how was it handled and what was a mistake? Because that process gives you insight to like, do they tolerate mistakes? Because again, we don't live in a world that's perfect, so mistakes and errors and delays and balls will be dropped at work. Is there like an okayness for it in that environment, or will you get fired? Will you like feel like I can't speak, I can't say anything because I fucked up, I made an error, and my boss is going to put me on a like warning or whatever, et cetera, right? So like what's the learning capacity for the person that you're interviewing with, which could be your potential boss, for their team, or for their public facing information like Farah mentioned with like lawsuits, external lawsuits, and how that's being handled.
So, more green flags. Another green flag would be multiple team members in the hiring process. So they're not just taking on, so it's not just one person that you were interviewing with in your department. You're getting experience to see like at least, I don't know, 1 to 2, hopefully 3 different people that you're working with in a department. If it's a bigger organization, I know sometimes it's not feasible with smaller organizations, but at least just like knowing what other, directors or managers that you will have to collaborate with is like a really great.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm smirking because I can think of I've worked at toxic places. So like I remember that I had to interview people, and as much as I wanted to bring a panel interview, there was no time for it. And so I was pushed to interview alone. I don't like interviewing alone because I'm not the only person that's part of that team. And so I remember in those situations where it was really hard to get people, coworkers, colleagues, other team leads to sit in your interview is very telling of that culture, right? Like people were either so busy, made no time, or don't care. Um, to sit in an interview, I think is also telling, right? So if you have one person sitting in the interviewee, as the interviewer position, more information to find out of like why it's just a solo interview versus like a panel versus a team. I know that folks get more nervous when it's multiple people interviewing you, but I would say it's like a bigger red flag if you're the only one in the interviewee because you're not getting perspectives from other people in the organization. So it's like one way to try and control what you can see up front. Like what are you
Definitely.
hiding if no one else is showing up? In my case, when I was like forced to interview alone, people didn't have time. People were always busy. So if you're not prioritizing like interviewing potential people who are going to be part of your team, that instant right with me.
Yeah.
And this is a place that was ongoing like a revolving door.
I was just about to say,
And
it's like they expect high attrition. They don't expect you to be there very long, so they don't even take the time to meet
yeah,
you. Yeah.
and who wants to work for that, y'all? Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Another green flag. Ask what you need to thrive. First of all, if they even know what that word means in the context of the workplace, that's a green flag. That's tight, I feel like. If they cringe at it, then that's not a green flag, right? If they're like, what do you mean by thriving? That's not what the workplace is for.
Run away. Turn around. Get an emergency call. Like, get up and leave, man. What did the Business Insider advice give you? Move on.
Yeah,
Move on. Move on.
truly.
Mm-hmm.
And then this kind of goes back to being open about mistakes. So just like transparent about the challenges that they face. I like to ask the day-to-day question because that is what's most important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can even ask like quarterly, what challenges do teams face, or the team that you would be working on specifically face. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then lastly, the biggest greenest flag of them all is if it's a clear and respectful process. So kind of circling back to that one recruiter who was like, I don't think we should be sending out rejection emails. Like, if they are not even doing that, and honestly, I encourage everybody to look for the recruiters on LinkedIn and connect with them and or follow them to see what's going on.
Yeah.
How they are speaking on LinkedIn tells
Mm-hmm.
a lot about what the hiring process is going to be like for that company.
Agree. Totally agree with that one. Do your field work.
Yeah, it's important. We can't say research anymore. They took that from us. We can't say do your research. Do your field work. Get out there.
And
You
then I mean, we're already kind of like an hour and 14. I know that this one does have a lot of editing, but do we want to keep going with the burnout connection? which we've kind of talked about.
Yeah,
Segment
we've
3
talked
goes
about
into,
all this stuff
yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, because we talked about like bias, safety. We talked about hidden
Mm.
triggers. I didn't say anything about setting boundaries, but that can be something else, like a whole other thing.
And it can be part of the takeaways, like without having to go too much into it, like here. I do like the rejection compounds stress. That could be another takeaway. When feedback is absent or vague, the brain fills a gap with self-blame, accelerating burnout.
Plus, it's worse for the neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even that can be the takeaway. I would like to
Rejection
acknowledge that.
fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can do, since we already did like questions to ask, this can be like the PDF that we put together. I thought that would be a good idea to have like things that we share, like the questions. Here, like we were gonna say questions to ask and kind of like go through it, but I think we already did that. Yep.
Yeah, we've talked
Yeah, we already
about
did
that
that.
a lot. Yeah, so just a PDF.
Yeah, reframing. Maybe we can just go into like um practical tools and coping as a kind of like closing takeaway.
Yeah, go with
Yeah?
that.
Okay. All right, ready?
Yay.
We're just gonna Okay. All right, y'all. So we talked Okay. All right, y'all. So we talked a lot about some psychological safety when it comes to interviewing and getting hired. And I hope we drove the point home that you have as much power, right, when you are job searching and when you are job hunting. I think so much that I've observed in LinkedIn is the burnout, the self-doubt that comes from like it's insane right now. So there's validation to like the hiring process is different. It has changed. It continues to change and to evolve. And so we're hoping that the conversation today is helping you think about like what are some things that you can do on your end for field work, to questions to ask during the interview to give you insight to help you discern, is this a job that yes I need, but do you want that job? Because you might be getting yourself into a situation that might be harder to get out of or might very well lead to your burnout. And so we're going to close off today with some practical tools. And, we're going to add a PDF of questions to ask to the show notes for this episode. And part of that is also declining unsafe offers. And so I think that's going to be one of the biggest takeaways that I think will be hard, right? Especially I can't get over the Business Insider or like the cases that we talked about today where, people are applying to jobs. You need a job to survive, healthcare, benefits, income, but also there's power on your end to discern good jobs and bad jobs and whether or not there will be psychological safety. And I think the biggest takeaway for this episode is that you have the right to decline a job offer and have the power to decline a job offer. You might see that it's works out in your favor in the long run.
Yeah, it really is taking your power back, is what this is. And this is what it's about, right? Because as we talked about, it is depleting to get all those rejections. It is depleting to track all of your applications in an Excel sheet. And then you see that it was 1,500 applications in the last 3 months. Like that's a lot. Reclaim
Wild.
your energy, right? Like you got to reclaim it. It's wild, but is the norm, which is so insane.
Mm-hmm.
But some ways that we can mitigate the onset of burnout during these times is number one, you can reframe the rejection as being a blessing in disguise. Like it wasn't meant for you, right? Like, oh, like this company is actually shit. Like that's another
Mm-hmm.
way to reframe the rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you can think about things that came up in the interview that were awful. There's a lot of ways that you can reframe the rejections. I think that, I guess, like affirmations or mantras or mottos, depending on like what school of thought that, you subscribe to, you can call it any of these things, but just like post rejection reflections, right? One thing that we all need to remember is that like this rejection is not a reflection of your worth, right? Like, you did all the things, you did everything you were supposed to do. This is not a reflection of your worth. This is a reflection of the horrible economy that we are living through right now. Another reflection that you can think about or say, you can literally say these exact words verbatim. The job market is trash right now. It is utter trash right now. Most of us,
the job market is trash right now. I'm just
there
saying
it
it
is.
with you.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
saying it with you
yes.
so they can say it with us. The job market is trash right now.
It is trash, right? So many qualified, overqualified people searching for work right now. You know, most people are struggling to find work. So it's definitely not you, it's the system. It's the system's fault. Another one, I'm not the problem. It's not me. It really isn't, because I'm sure you went to school, you got the degrees, you got the grades, you got the certifications that they told you to get. You're not the problem. The system is the problem, right?
Yeah. And hopefully, what we talked about today gives you the information, some data, some tells, some signals, so that this can be validated for you, right? So that you can see how there's a lot of hiccups in the system. And as much as we would want to fix a broken system, we want to be mindful about ourselves in that process as well. And that's where that kind of like empowerment comes in.
Ooh, can I challenge you on the system thing being broken? I would argue that it's this way on purpose.
By design. Oh
I
yeah.
think it's by design. Yeah,
I
the
would
system
argue
was
that
the
too.
yeah. See, that's what happens when you talk to people.
Yeah.
You start to realize that, like, you're not alone in that thinking. It just happened right here on the mic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely argue, and we should schedule one of our upcoming conversation shows about how the system is not broken, it's actually intentionally designed by this, right?
Definitely. I have
Like
so
this.
many thoughts, so many Black American thoughts.
Same. So many
Okay,
first-gen Latina thoughts about that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I bet you
Yeah.
do. I love that we both have such unique perspectives on this.
Perspectives.
Yeah, it's very important.
Totally. As I
Right,
went
so I
into this
guess,
field, I haven't seen anyone that looks like us talk about what we're talking about
yeah.
in the way and the perspective and the awareness and discernment that we talk about it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Adam Grants and Brene Browns, right? Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of those. There's also this chick on LinkedIn. She's kind of cool. I like the name of her podcast. It's called like Punk HR or something. So it's like challenging HR a little bit. Pretty cool, I think, just to, I guess, randomly promote her LinkedIn
I have to check her
community.
out. I have to check her out. And then at this point, I'll take the opportunity to tell people that we are also on LinkedIn.
Yes, we are. Yes.
On Burnout Meets Thriving, you can join our group where we talk about this some more. We can engage with you directly. Where we'll also drop some of the PDFs and information that we share here, like that punk rock HR.
Yeah.
That sounds cool already.
I know, right?
And, just wrap up by telling you that, like, the job search is a two-way street. If you have been treating it like a one-way street, this is your sign to also put yourself as a player who has choice and who can use strategy and who can be empowered to say, like, this job seems fucked up. Keep looking.
So here's the challenge, the listener challenge this week. This is for y'all. Breathe, first of all. I know you're deep into the job search right now. Remember, you have power. You really do.
You have choice.
You have choice. And one choice that you can make this week is to set a time boundary around how long you choose to job search, around how long you're choosing to stay on LinkedIn and scroll and sending messages to recruiters. Set a time boundary. Maybe you've been on a job search like like it's a job. You've been 8 hours a day on it, 5 days a week, sometimes weekends. You don't need to do all that.
Mhm.
Why? Because you're getting the same result despite what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
Say to yourself, I'm going to reclaim my time. I'm only going to do this for 1 to 2 hours a day.
Mhm.
I bet you're still going to get the same amount of applications out, and I bet you're going to get the same response rate. So,
And
good
I
luck.
think that you'll definitely value yourself. It's a big ownership to take back your time in that way and not to feel. I know that a lot of us from marginalized backgrounds feel like we have to spend all the endless hours to try and get there, but we also have to work smarter, not harder, right? Like that very cheesy saying of work smarter, not harder. And hopefully you pick up some strategy from us where you don't need to do the endless hours of job hunting and applying. Taking care of yourself, taking breaks is just as or more important, because at the end of the day, you need to be your friend first and you need to take care of yourself first, and the job comes later. I know that we hear a lot of work and life balance, and I will tell you that in my work with Thriving Human, it's life work balance. And it's a huge thing that I try to promote, where in our capitalist world, they want us to put the job first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we talked about and the system design is for the job first, us later. Let's switch that. It's life and work balance. And it's not even balance, it's harmony, right? How does your work fit into your life? And so hopefully all of that gives you some discernment power to be able to not burn out, or not burn out as much during the job search process.
Yeah, let's be realistic on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It takes time to build these habits. It's not easy, you know. It's a lot
Yeah.
of internal self-talk, like you were
Yeah.
saying. It's rewiring, reprogramming, and all of that.
Mhm.
But you guys can keep tuning into us. We're gonna keep talking about what we're talking about. You know, next week we're tackling psychological safety and burnout culture and how they are intertwined with one another. Because when safety's missing, you're gonna have some burnout happening, no matter what.
Mhm.
Whether
100%.
right, like whether you
100%.
realize it, whether it starts like manifesting in your body, you know, through migraines or tummy
Ooh,
aches or whatever. She's
girl,
feeling
you
called
are
out, everybody.
speaking. You are speaking to the Miriam of 2 years ago. God, yeah. More tales on that for a future episode.
Yeah, a lot of people are going through it, you know.
Yeah.
But until then, I want you guys to go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn, follow Miriam on LinkedIn. You can just, you know, search for our names and you'll see us. You can look
Mhm.
for our group on LinkedIn, Burnout Meets
Mhm.
Thriving, where we very much encourage you all to post and comment because we are cultivating a community here. This is not
Mhm.
just about us yelling into mics our opinions. Also, you guys can pick up my burnout reversal kit, conveniently located on Etsy at Burnout SS is the name of the shop. Super easy to find. You can also find some free burnout resources at my website, burnoutsupportsociety.com. Do you
Woo.
have anything you would like to promote?
thrivinghuman.life is where you can find me and the work that I do around essentially going from burnout to thriving. And a lot of the work that I focus on, although I will do a plug for Farrah's burnout reversal kit, because um I was burned out 2, 3 years ago really bad. And if I had your checklist or like the perspective that you provide in that kit, it would have been extremely validating. I wouldn't have stayed at that job for as long as I would have stayed. So for anyone who feels a little burned out, a lot of burned out, this is a really good tool to kind of like recalibrate and say like what the fuck's happening, and for you to like figure out how to get out of it. And then you get to meet Farah, who can help you get out of it.
Oh, thanks for
So
saying
y'all,
that.
check that out. Check out the burnout reversal kit. And then once you're done with your burnout, right? Once we can manage that, then you can check out the Thriving Human Blueprint.
Yeah.
which is the product that I created to kind of help you thrive. So, like, those things cannot happen when you're in them. You cannot thrive when you are burned out. We have to, like, figure out what's happening with a burnout situation, and we have to get that under control, and that's where Farra comes in. And once you have that a little settled in, you know, like, we can put in the practices for living a thriving life. Burnout is always going to be part of it in the sense of, like, we always have to manage. These are
Yeah.
practices. And so that's what you'll find at any or either of our websites, thrivinghuman.life or on LinkedIn, like Farra said. Check out the stuff that we are putting out there, because I think the difference in what we're creating is that we actually lived through it. So it's very lived experience. It's not something that we just hit up the AI for and said, create this thing. Like, no, this is actually lived experience. We designed this stuff because we went through it. And this is what worked for us. So we're hoping that it can connect and help others too.
Went through it and studied it and personally conducted research on it. So we're here.
So
we got extra. It all. They need to know.
They do. That this is passion and commitment. Yes. Yes, I hear that. I hear that. So y'all, until then, keep speaking up.
Keep speaking up. Keep showing up.
And remember, the revolution starts
with you.
With you.